In 1988, it was the South Koreans' turn to host the Olympic Games. Now they had a chance to show the world their new prosperity. The South Koreans knew the high price that had been paid for their success. But in the Olympic glow, their own achievements still amazed them.
It was a 180-degree change from one extreme to another. I don't think there's another country in the world that has gone through such an extraordinary development in such a short time. I think we've accomplished a great deal.
But there was no monopoly on miracles. In the years since Japan had shown the way, others had started to experience the same explosive growth and rapid social change. They were called the tiger economies. Asians themselves began to boast of Asian values. They claimed their growing success was due to discipline and hard work, the traditional schools, and strong authoritarian control. They looked forward to the 21st century as a time of continued growth and unprecedented prestige in the world.
A journey to Hong Kong is like a journey into China's future. One of the prettiest skylines in the world in constant flux. More building is taking place here than ever before. Over 170 banks are located here, and property prices are going through the roof. Everybody wants to be in on the action.
In just 3 decades, Taiwan has evolved from its agricultural roots to an export powerhouse. Exports account for about 70% of its GDP. Consumer electronics and technology lead the way with brands like HTC, Asus, and Acer.
GPS, CNN Sunday morning 10 Eastern and Pacific.
Now for our What in the World segment. A bold proposal caught my eye this week. One of Moscow's top academics says Russia should build a new capital city. This city would be far, far away from Moscow, 4,000 miles to be exact, in Vladivostok. Why? The person who proposed the idea, Sergei Karaganov of Moscow's Higher School of Economics, wrote in a state-run newspaper that a capital in the Far East would make Russia part of what he calls the rising world, closer to dynamic Asian economies and further away from an aging Europe. The idea of moving capitals is not without precedent. British India moved its capital from the coastal city of Calcutta to the more centrally located Delhi in 1911, and it created the city of New Delhi. In the 1920s, Turkish nationalists moved their capital from Istanbul to Ankara, kickstarting rapid growth in central Turkey. More recently, Brazil moved its capital from Rio de Janeiro to Brasilia in the center of the country, and Kazakhstan moved its seat of government from Almaty to Astana to be closer to Russia. It's unlikely President Putin will want to follow suit, but he would do well to think about the underlying thrust behind the argument. Moscow needs urgent reform. Russia is not really a booming emerging market economy. It is an oil-rich kleptocracy where mostly everything else in the country, including its once vaunted military, is in a shambles. Putin often cites figures to show that he has presided over a boom. The average Russian's income has risen more than 7-fold in the last decade, from $2,000 to $14,000 a year. Yet that statistic tells an incomplete story. Russia's growth has been uneven. Moscow has 78 billionaires, more than any other city in the world. Those billionaires, along with others in the rest of the country, account for 20% of Russia's GDP, far higher than any country. That doesn't leave much of Russia's economy for businesses and the other 141 million people in the country. The second problem is that Moscow's fate has for years been linked to crude oil prices. Look at this chart with a very clear correlation. It shows how Russian stocks have risen and fallen in step with oil prices. According to Reuters, Russia now needs crude to trade at $117 a barrel simply to balance its budget. That number used to be $50 as recently as 2008 and $27 at the start of Putin's first presidency. talk about a bloated state. In part, Moscow's escalating expenses are a result of Putin's largesse, a policy designed to keep his electorate happy and keep him in power. Rising crude oil prices have allowed Putin to maintain that system of bribery, but with global growth now slowing, he can no longer count on the same set of conditions for the rest of his presidency. Instead, he will need to reform the economy. Private companies need the freedom and the confidence to actually develop. Russia has only one main bank, for example. Its people need a financial system that they can trust. Russia ranks 143rd in the world on Transparency International's corruption index. To his credit, Putin acknowledges these problems. Shortly after his re-election, he spoke of improving Russia's rank in the World Bank's ease of doing business list, from 120th in the world to a place in the top 20. He's also targeted raising investment from 20% of GDP to 27%. But if those targets sound somewhat familiar, it's because he set similar ones before, during his first presidency, and didn't meet them. This time he has not only the economy to fix, but he's also faced with an opposition movement with growing courage. The Kremlin this week welcomed a new cabinet, but it's mostly full of the same old faces. If President Putin keeps the same old policies, his problems may only just be starting.